But there, I think Nepal would need to decide whether you want to cater for Asian tourists or whether you want to cater for Western tourists. We will not leave Nepal.
Okay.
As soon as you graduate, we want to continue to support Nepal. So there again, really, it's really not for me to advise Nepal. What we are doing is supporting Nepal in the implementation of your constitution. So I'm hopeful that Nepal can ratify those international conventions, can then effectively implement them. And we, of course, once ratified, stand ready to support Nepal in the implementation of those, of course. And I think, you as Nepal, you can be really proud of your achievement.
Namaste. Welcome to the New Businesses interview. Today we have with us Her Excellency Nona Deprez, Ambassador of European Union (EU) in Nepal. She heads the delegation of the European Union to Nepal. Though Nepal hosts separate embassies of some EU member countries, her office coordinates them in addition to representing here the other EU member countries as well. So in this interview, we'll be discussing how Nepal-EU relations are evolving and what is in store for the future. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Namaste.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Excellency. So, how do you assess your tenure as the leader of EU delegation in Nepal?
That's a difficult question. Let me first just slightly nuance what you just said in the introduction, because I would not want to that my colleagues would not be happy with me. So I support my colleagues who are accredited to Nepal but who are resident in New Delhi, for example, in their representation here to Nepal. But I do not represent the individual member states. I represent the European Union, yes.
Okay. So thank you for that correction. We'll discuss that later also if need be. So how do you assess our relation, between you and Nepal so far?
So I think we've come a long way. Next year we will celebrate 50 years of European Union-Nepal diplomatic relations. So we have a very mature partnership, which is long-standing, which is trustworthy, which is based on respect for each other and on common values. As far as my tenure is concerned, so 3 years is of course a very short period, especially if you compare it to time in Nepal, which has a different significance. And it was also in a very challenging moment. We've known a lot of turbulences. I arrived in Nepal in between the first and the second COVID wave. So I think the whole world has been trying to recover from COVID. And then Russia aggressed Ukraine, which has led also to a major crisis, of course, in the world. So I think it's been challenging, but it's been really an honor and a privilege for me to represent the European Union here in Nepal and to live in Nepal and to get to know people in Nepal and to work with Nepali. So very happy personally.
So this period was largely focused on EU multi-annual indicative program, MIP, I think that is called, 2014 to 2020. And a new MIP is now in implementation for 2021 to 2027. So how do you evaluate achievements of the last MIP?
So we're now conducting a strategic evaluation, country evaluation of the last MIP. This is led by our headquarters, and Nepal Embassy in Brussels is also part of the steering committee of that strategic evaluation. So what we believe in very strongly as European Union is in country ownership. So we think that you are the ones who know best how to develop what is best for you. So we support your policies. We support your policy reforms. That's why also our preferred aid modality is budget support, where we have a strong policy dialogue together with the government, together with other stakeholders, with civil society, and of course also with other development partners. So what we do here is the previous MIP is very closely aligned to your national development plan. So in the previous MIP, we focused on rural development, on education, on nutrition, and on good governance and democracy. So those are things that we continue to do because we, after having consulted, government, civil society, business, we have come to see that these priorities are still relevant. So these are also largely the focus of the new MIP, where we focus on GRID, this green, resilient, inclusive development agenda, Nepal's agenda, where 17 development partners have signed up to.
Right.
We continue to support education, nutrition, because we also think that you cannot have development if it's not resilient. So we continue to focus on supporting human capital development. And then, of course, we continue to work on good governance. So if you look at the previous MIP, so we have supported Nepal's agriculture strategy.
Right.
Also in implementing the constitution, because that has been gone to the provinces. So we have also supported the provinces in being able to implement this agriculture development strategy. I think we have seen that this is closely aligned to your priorities. We have continued to support education, but more like access to education.
Right.
So now in the new MIP, we continue to focus on education, but more looking at quality education outcomes and that inclusivity in the access to education. And then we have also been quite agile and flexible in responding to new needs.
Right.
So in responding to the earthquake in 2015, so where we have changed our programs and we have supported also reconstruction, and also in supporting to COVID, where we have also made our programs more flexible in order to be able to better support you.
Right.
So initial results of the strategic evaluation look positive.
Great. So how is the progress in the new MIP 2021-2027?
So I was very happy last Friday. We just co-signed with the government of Nepal 2 important new actions. So one, which I already mentioned, was on education, which is budget support. So it goes on budget, on treasury. And where we work also with our colleagues from Finland on teacher education, to be able to provide really, really quality in education outcomes, which is still very much needed. The other action that we co-signed with the government last Friday is on local adaptation to climate change, where we continue the work that has been started over 20 years ago by our Finnish colleagues on climate resilient access to water, and also working now increasingly on urban planning and on making sure that cities are adapted to climate change.
Right. So one major issue that Nepal has with EU is the EU ban on Nepal air service providers. So now that all the other countries have no problem with Nepal air service providers, why is EU still strongly in favor of the ban?
So let me first say, so it's called an EU safety list because our primary concern is safety.
Obviously.
So we are working very closely to support Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal in improving safety in aviation and civil aviation here in Nepal. So I think we've seen a lot of progress on paper. So there should be an on-site assessment visit to see whether in practice all of these recommendations are being implemented. So we're hopeful that that assessment visit can take place, and then that it will provide, hopefully, a positive recommendation to the Air Safety Committee. This is a very technical issue, so it depends really on whether all of these safety measures that have been recommended, but that are recommended not only by the European Union, but also by ICAO, by others.
Yes.
And this is just for the safety of Nepali passengers, international passengers, for all of us. No, I think this is our common concern, is safety.
Yes.
So I think it's a good thing that Nepal is improving safety there. So we're hopeful. Let's see in the
I think
coming
one of
months.
the demand or request from countries, the European Union or other countries also, was that the Civil Aviation Authority be separated as a controlling authority, and the Air Service Authority separately. Is that also one of the reasons it is still not happening, or other reasons, technical reasons?
So again, it's technical and it's a bit more complex than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all agree that there's a potential conflict of interest if the regulator and the air service provider are together.
Right.
So how to address
Mm-hmm.
that potential conflict of interest is a decision of the government of Nepal.
Right.
So whether to keep both services under one hat or whether to have a clear split is for government of Nepal to decide.
What they have said in your meetings, they said, will they separate it, regulator and their provider? They must have promised you.
So I think 5 years ago, government of Nepal had decided that it wanted to split Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal. So they drafted a bill, which was in parliament for the last 5 years and which was not adopted.
Right.
So now the Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation has proposed a new bill to the cabinet. So
let's hope it will pass.
Up to you to decide, and then of course up to Parliament.
Right.
It's really not for us to say.
True. Thank you, Excellency. So EU is one of the major trade partners of Nepal, but Nepal's trade with EU is seen concentrated in a few countries like Germany. Are there any plans to diversify in more focus across the EU member country?
So there again, I think we are very much in favor of increasing trade and investment links between the European Union and Nepal. And we have this very big consumer market, so that you should exploit.
Right.
So with that in mind, the European Economic Chamber, with our support, has organized the first EU-Nepal Business Forum, where we try to attract European business, that is already present in India, to come to Nepal. And we've also tried to have a platform where European and Nepali business could interact and then could look into increasing trade to European countries. I think there's a high potential to increase trade from Nepal to Europe, but also from Europe to Nepal. Really not for us to say to which country.
Right.
I think our countries also have their own, specialties. What is really required in the European market is constant quality, constant high quality.
Right.
So that is something that is sometimes lacking in the exports of Nepal to the European Union. But I would urge all businesses of Nepal to make the best possible use of our current very preferential trade regime, which is called everything but arms, which means that Nepali exports enjoy 0% duty and 0% quotas coming into Europe.
Right.
And for everything but arms. And that is until you graduate as least developed country status in 2026. But there is also a transition period of 3 years. So until 2029, you benefit from that preferential trade regime. So this is really the moment to try to increase those trade flows to Europe in, those products where Nepal has a comparative advantage, where you have a very positive marketing image in Europe. The EU here in Nepal, we support the Pashmina sector, we support the coffee sector.
Carpet also in the past.
Carpet in the past, but we no longer have a specific program there, or also tea. So I think there is a high potential there. Post 2029, you would need to apply to our second best preferential trade regime, which is called GSP Plus, which is nearly as advantageous as this one. For this, what is very important for us is that we increasingly link trade to sustainable development. And our consumers also want to know that the products that they buy have been sustainably produced.
Right.
So our GSP Plus is linked to ratification and effective implementation of some international conventions in labor rights, in human rights, and in environmental rights. So this requires some preparation, which will require some time. So I would also urge, Nepal government, business associations, trade unions, to work together on that to satisfy the conditions to apply to GSP Plus, and rather sooner than later.
Excellency, you have already been almost 3 years in Nepal. So besides these main 3 items, you talked coffee, tea, and Pashmina. What other products could we sell in Europe? Any idea?
I think, Nepal really has this very positive image in Europe. So everything which is, sustainable production here, you have, what's it called? Hemp. No?
Hemp, yes.
Yes. Hemp,
clothes,
clothes, these carpets, but I mean, probably other innovative ideas. I've met also many young entrepreneurs who have wonderful ideas and beautiful products that could do very well in Europe.
Right.
So I think there are many potential business that could work.
Any idea in service sector Nepal could export?
Well, so I know that you have a growing IT services. I think that really needs to be scaled up very quickly into software engineering so that you stay ahead of artificial intelligence. Yes. That you can provide your, more services than just the basic chat GPT can do.
Yes.
And then that would also have, of course, high potential. Yes. And then, of course, there is tourism services. Yes.
Yes.
But there, I think Nepal would need to decide whether you want to cater for Asian tourists or whether you want to cater for Western tourists.
Right.
Because I think what most Western tourists enjoy is nature, is slow tourism, is sustainable development, is not bulldozer roads and landslides and waste construction.
Yes, absolutely. Excellency, so how is you helping Nepal in graduation from LDC status? After his graduation, which is happening soon, Nepal is likely to lose some preferential treatment, as you just mentioned also. It has been enjoying in EU now. So what measures are being taken to address this situation?
Okay, so first let me just clarify that we will not leave Nepal.
Okay.
As soon as you graduate, we want to continue to support Nepal. We are in this very close partnership. We want to both make sure that graduation is sustainable.
Right.
And then we are ready to support Nepal in its graduation strategy. So National Planning Commission has been working on designing such a strategy. We have yet to see the strategy. As soon as we are consulted and we see the strategy, where we and other development partners are ready to support Nepal, of course, in this graduation strategy. So I think everything that we do now goes towards a sustainable graduation. Like our support to the GRID agenda, to green, resilient, inclusive development is good for sustainable graduation. All of this is really fits together. I know Nepal is also working on the 16th National Development Plan that fits with your graduation strategy. That fits also with your nationally determined contribution for your climate ambitions. And it fits, of course, also with our own priorities, and it fits with the grid agenda. So I would say everything we do goes towards sustainable graduation. And on specific items like raising awareness on the importance to apply for GSP+, we've been working on this with business associations, with trade unions, with government. So I'm hopeful that Nepal can ratify those international conventions, can then effectively implement them. And we, of course, once ratified, stand ready to support Nepal in the implementation of those, of course, also more specifically.
Excellency, the focus of EU assistance overseas has been on green development. We also discussed in Nepal, there is a problem of green extremism. So one of this extremism is Nepal's huge imports of wood, while the wood in domestic forest is rotting. How is EU advising Nepal on this?
So you're the one using the word green extremism, yes?
Yes.
I've not said that.
Yes.
So let me just give you the example of what we try to do internally, yes? So we know that historically we have emitted a lot of greenhouse gases. We want to become the first climate carbon neutral continent by 2050. So for that, for example, we have a biodiversity strategy. Biodiversity inside is one of our 3 pillars of our Green Deal, what we call our Green Deal, which is our green growth strategy. Because we believe that, development, economic growth goes hand in hand with being environmentally sustainable, fiscally sustainable, and socially sustainable, leaving no one behind. So our biodiversity strategy inside the EU is about sustainable forest management. This is about trying to increase our forest coverage, but also at the same time, sustainably using our forest into sustainable timber products. So those, again, goes hand in hand. You don't have to reduce your forest coverage and use your timber products. What you have to do is to rationally use, make use of the forest, trim those trees that need to be trimmed, and that can be used economically and have an economic value, and replant new trees. And I think, you as Nepal, you can be really proud of your achievements. You have increased your forest coverage.
17 to 23%.
Yes. So now you're nearly reaching, I think, already your ambition of having a 45% forest coverage. So this is a great achievement, your reforestation and your afforestation program. But the forest can be managed, sustainably. And it has several uses. It's used not only for carbon credits, for nature, for the well-being of the planet, of the people, but it also has an economic value. So I would not subscribe to your word of green extremism.
I'd use another word, that is forest frustration. That is among the people who have been looking after the forest, especially the women cooperatives. They are the one who have been supporting forest to go in Nepal. But their complaint is they have not been able to utilize or use those forests.
So both can go hand in hand. And we're ready to provide advice to Nepal if needed, if wanted.
Okay. Excellency, another focus of EU assistance in Nepal is in strengthening the federal structure. While there is growing criticism of federal structure and increasing demand for reversing it. So what went wrong in your view? So what is EU advising Nepal on this?
So there again, it's really not for me to advise Nepal. What we are doing is supporting Nepal in the implementation of your constitution. Federalism is part of your constitution.
Of course, yes.
So as long as you don't change your constitution, we continue to support implementation of your constitution. Part of the constitution is rollout of federalism. So we have been supporting, but we have been working with government of Nepal, with the provincial governments, with local governments, on trying to implement the constitution,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that each tier of the government
Mm-hmm.
has the capacity to implement its mandate
Right.
as per the constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So I think here, unfortunately, those laws that are required to implement the constitution
Mm-hmm.
have not yet been passed by
Right.
parliament. I think there are
Like-
about 50 laws in the queue,
Okay.
like the Civil Service Act, like the Education Act, like the TVET Act, like the Police Act, like
Mm-hmm.
so many acts, yes,
Mm-hmm. Right.
that are not allowing
The federal provinces
to
with their
fully
rights.
play their role as per the constitution.
Actually, the voices against, especially the provincial system, especially the federal system is okay, but not the provinces, because they have become big burden to the society. That is the main issue. So it's Nepal. It's parliamentarians, it's Nepali society, Nepali people who have voted for this. So it's Nepal's stake. But you, as an advisor, as a well-wisher of Nepal, what is your take on the provincial system? Federal system, okay, fine, but no provinces. What would you say in that?
So I would say that, we started this conversation saying things about time, but on this particular issue, it seems to me that Nepal is a bit impatient,
Right.
because the provincial level is the newest one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it takes time
Mm-hmm.
to have institution building.
Mm-hmm.
So constitution is 2015, then there were elections in 17, there was COVID in 19, then elections again in 22, then these laws have not been passed. So the provinces, they don't have the capacity, they have not received the
Right.
capacity
Right.
to play their full role.
Right.
But it takes time to implement federalism. Me personally, I come from a federal country, Belgium,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been working on federal structures for the last 50 years.
Right. Right.
And we're still not done.
Mm-hmm. So you mean to say it takes time, the practice, the culture, it should be, we should bear, we should implement, then it will work properly. That's what you want to say?
So I want to say that
Uh-huh.
we should leave some time
Mm-hmm.
for the system to be properly implemented.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I also think there's an urgency
Mm-hmm.
to fully implement the constitution
Mm-hmm.
by passing these laws.
Right.
I don't think we can continue to be in this situation, which is neither nor.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, there's an urgency.
Right. Last question I want to ask you is about the population census we had, Nepal government had done. Have you analyzed or have you noticed some trends? Would you like to say something on that?
So we've been looking at the statistics that have been published by the National Statistic Bureau on their website. It's very interesting. I think Nepal will really need to take very important decisions in the 2 decades to come,
Right.
because there is a changing structure of society.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at an aging population,
Mm-hmm.
like in many other countries. Yes.
Right.
So you need to take some decisions, on your social security coverage, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What is worrying to me also is you see an increasing difference of the sex at birth ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it used to be 107 to 100
Mm-hmm.
of boys to girls.
Right.
And now it has increased to 112 to 100.
Okay.
So that will be worrisome in the coming decades,
Mm-hmm.
when all those boys will grow up.
Mm-hmm.
They may be frustrated.
Right.
There are not sufficient number of girls.
Right.
So those are important societal things to look into. And I think Nepal is working on a few sectoral studies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will be important to take into account those demographic data
Mhm.
into the future policy making and into the strategic vision of the development of Nepal in the decades
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
come.
I think you also had done study on our LDC, SDG goals issues. There were some findings also. Would you like to share something on that?
So we have looked at what Nepal's, so LDC graduation, you
Yes,
mean?
yes.
So there was a very interesting study which was done by Dr. Swarling Wagle.
Mhm.
So he looked also at Nepal if you compare it to the region.
Mhm.
And there an important finding is that there is no comparative disadvantage for Nepal to graduate, as all of your neighbors are either graduating, such as Bangladesh or Laos, or have already graduated,
Mhm.
such as Sri Lanka or Pakistan. So I think it's very important to really use the advantages that you have now.
Mhm.
Use it better, because Nepal has also not been able to fully benefit from the advantages of being a least developed country. Not in terms of access to European market, but also not in terms of concessional loans,
Right.
because there is also unfortunately, a low absorption capacity
Mhm.
of these concessional loans.
Loans.
So I think Nepal should also work on that.
Right. Anything else would you like to highlight, Excellency, that I did not ask?
So, well, I've just very much enjoyed
Uh-huh.
my tenure here in Nepal. I've met some amazing people, young people, women,
Mhm.
political leaders, deputy mayors.
Mhm.
So I think there's a high potential here, and it's a beautiful country and beautiful people. And I think also striking for us coming from Europe, because we have the same motto, which is unity and diversity.
Mhm. What were the major achievements during your tenure for the last 3 years, if you like to highlight some of the points?
So I think I've been very proud of the support that the European Union has provided to Nepal in terms of COVID,
Right.
when we provided a lot of medical equipment, but also providing vaccines through COVAX.
Yes.
I think that is one of the achievements. The other achievement is that we have worked ever closer together with the EU member states as Team Europe, but also with the European Investment Bank. We're increasing our investment and our support to renewable energy here in Nepal. I think that is also very important going forward, looking both at solar energy and hydropower.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for your support. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very candid interview for our audience. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you.